Karibuni sana, welcome back to this channel where we spread love and positive vibes. I want to start by thanking our new subscribers and our returning subscribers. We value you, we appreciate you so much, and we thank you so much. If you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly do so, and also like our videos. Liking the videos actually makes the YouTube to put the video in the algorithms. So kindly like the video and we are going to appreciate. So today I want to look at Jamaica in 60s. And there is this lady I listened to her interview. It was very educative, and actually she narrated to us how Jamaica was during her time. And some of the things I could actually relate with them, because what she was talking about in Jamaica was also happening here in Kenya. I think, I don't know whether people are from the same source, from the same family, and people from different corners of the world, especially the black people, do the same things at the same time. Because what Miss Sisri was talking about actually was happening here in Kenya, and I also checked the comment section, and people were talking about things that I experienced them here in Kenya. Maybe I'm not very old like Madam Sisri, but I can tell you some of the things she was talking about, I have seen them here in Kenya. There is this comment I saw about teachers who would actually walk in class with a stick, let me call it a stick, because they used to use a stick here in Kenya, and walk around the class, and if you were late to arrive in school, you could be beaten a lot. And I saw another person talking about if you missed the spellings, you faced the music by being beaten by the teachers. If you made slight mistake, and the teacher came to know that you have made a mistake, there was a lot of beating. Those days, there was beating a lot. I remember, and I saw this, even people talking about it in Jamaica. I remember there was a teacher that used to tell us to say the multiplication table. I saw the Jamaican talking about, it was about what? 1 to 12. Multiple, something like that. And if you could not say multiplication table, it was a very big fight. And I saw this was happening in Jamaica. There was a lot of beating, even when you made a mistake in arithmetic, in spelling, in anything that was taught in class. And if you happened to report to the parents about being beaten for the mistakes you made, the parent will go back to school, the parent beats you, and the teacher beats you. And I saw somebody in Jamaica also talking about the same thing. So I think the things that were happening here in Kenya were still also happening in Jamaica. I remember there was this guy who was saying from Jamaica that no complaining to parents. Even if something happens to you, you could not complain, because that could earn you another beating. And if your granny or your grandmother found that you have been beaten, she could also come and beat you. So you're beaten by the teacher, you're beaten by your parents, and you're beaten by your grandparents. Triple punishment. I don't know whether the children of nowadays can actually tolerate that, because nowadays, here in Kenya, beating in schools is prohibited. You cannot beat a pupil or a student, and I think even in Jamaica it's the same thing. So we have evolved from the fights that were being fought in school, the beatings that were happening to school, that were happening in schools, to not caning or not beating students, and that is where we are today. I also listened to Madam Sisri talking about the bus that used to carry passengers in Jamaica in the 60s. And she was talking about the bus that was referred to as JOS, Jamaica or minibus surfaces. Jamaica omnibus surfaces, JOS. And she was saying that during those days, there was a lot of discipline. When you entered the bus, you have to arrive on time. There was a particular time the bus was supposed to depart and it was supposed to arrive, and the bus kept that time very, very well because the buses had inspectors. And by the way, guys, let me first finish about this. So the buses had inspectors that ensured the drivers kept time. So if the bus left a particular station at 6 a.m., then you have to be there by 6 a.m. If you are late, you'll find the bus gone. So there was a lot of discipline in terms of timekeeping, in terms of the bus surfaces, the departure time, and the arrival time. And Miss Cicely was talking about a bus. Sorry, guys. So there was this JOS bus, and they used to be classified with numbers. There was JOS 1, JOS 2, JOS 3, and so on. Depending on the route the bus is taking. By the way, I didn't know this. But here in Kenya also, the buses had their departure time and their arrival time. And it was a lot of discipline. Not like nowadays, the bus can leave anytime, can arrive anytime. There is no specific time for the arrival and the departure of the bus. But in Jamaica, there was that time the bus is supposed to arrive and the time the bus is supposed to leave, and the passengers could arrive in time, because if you don't arrive in time, you are left by the bus. It's just like nowadays the aeroplanes. You cannot just miss the departure time because you will be left by the aeroplane. So that was the case during Miss Cicely's time in Jamaica in 60s. And therefore these buses used to have tickets. And the tickets were made from litmus papers. This one was sort of entertaining to me because I could imagine the tickets were made of litmus papers and had different colors depending on the stage the bus is supposed to stop. So there was purple litmus color, there was, I think, red. Maybe the Jamaicans in the house can tell us the colors of the litmus paper, which were used as tickets to the bus JOS. And it was the colors depended on the stage that one had to arrive. So you knew that you had to arrive in stage A by the color of the ticket you'll be given. And this is so organized. This is so well planned. I cannot imagine Jamaica was that well planned in the 60s. That was epic. Meaning that today, Jamaica would have evolved a lot if by 60s there were these tickets and they had specific color indicating the stage the passenger was to arrive. That was a lot of organization, very good organization. And therefore that one was a plus to me, because in Kenya the receipts were of the same color. So you have to tell the conductor the stage you are supposed to arrive so that he can actually alert the driver so that you can be dropped. But in Jamaica, the colors of the receipt actually indicated where you are supposed to arrive. The conductor could tear the ticket after payment. By the way, guys, I found this the same in Kenya. So the tickets were not made up of litmus paper in Kenya, they were actually papers. But after you pay the bus, the ticket could be torn so that you don't use that ticket on another route. But in Jamaica, I don't know why the conductor used to tear the ticket. So the ticket used to be torn in a very, very unique way in Jamaica. And like I have said, these tickets had the colors, some were blue, some were purple, some were yellow, depending on the stage that you are supposed to arrive. This is good, quite good information, and I really enjoyed learning about Jamaica in the 60s. Schedules were kept each time for departure and time for arrival, and people kept time. People could not be late to arrive on time if the bus is departing in a given station at a given time. They would be there. So there were schedules. People used to line up with a lot of discipline, and they could enter the bus on time, and the bus could actually leave on time. Even before the bus is full, the bus could leave. In other words, if the time to leave a given station arrives, or the time it is time to leave that station, the bus could not wait to get full. It could leave with a number of passengers that have entered the bus. This is a lot of discipline. You know, sometimes you enter the bus and you are kept there until the buses are full. Like today, I traveled by a Nissan. Here in Kenya, we call them matatu. So I entered a matatu, and this matatu was taking me from destination A to B. And it didn't have passengers. But they have to wait until the passengers are full, and they even carry excess. That is how things have changed. During those days, there was a lot of discipline, and people could not actually add extra people when the matatu is already full. But nowadays, you are given a piece of wood, you sit on that piece of wood here in Kenya, and you are added excess people until the Nissan, we call them the Nissans, are full. So we can see a lot of evolving in Jamaica. So there was a lot of discipline in the passengers entering this bus. They were called the Jaws bus. And the time of arrival and the time of departure, and a lot of respect to the conductor and the driver. Nowadays we see a lot of disrespect with the young people and the grown-up, but according to the source of this information, there was a lot of respect to the people that are working in the bus, the conductor and the driver. So let us go on and see how Jamaica was in the 60s. So there was also other means of transport. Remember that in those early years, the 50s, the 60s, the number of vehicles were actually few. And even here in Kenya, the vehicles were owned by the rich. And therefore it was very, very hard for an average person or a poor person to own a vehicle. And therefore there were very, very few vehicles in Jamaica. And that is why we have seen the means of transport was actually through these buses, the Jaws bus, and Mrs. Lee used to, was talking about she could be transported from Montego Bay to St. Anne, and she could be dropped in school somewhere along the way. So these are the buses that used to ferry people from one destination to the other. And you can imagine these buses had specifically time of arrival and time of departure, meaning that if you are late, it means you could not go wherever you are going because the bus has gone. So according to Miss Cicely, the bus was taking her from Montego Bay to St. Anne's Bay, but others talked about St. Andrew. So these buses could go to all corners of Jamaica, and that is why they were numbered. So the number meant the route the bus was supposed to go. The buses had inspectors, like I had said earlier, and the drivers had time to actually make sure the bus leaves on time and the bus arrives on time. That was the work of the inspectors. And the inspectors actually were always in the bus to ensure that they kept time. Then there were other means of transport. There were the bicycles, the scooters, the motorbikes, and they were very, very popular because like I have said, the vehicles were very few because only the rich could afford the vehicles. There was also transportation using the mule and the donkeys drawing the carts. And here in Kenya, actually even up to today, there are some places in the upcountry where we have the donkeys and the mule actually transporting goods or transporting people. But also we have bicycles here in Kenya, we have motorcycles here in Kenya, but you can see that during those days in Jamaica, the motorcycles or the motorbikes and the bicycles were many because, of course, there were not many cars. And according to Miss Cicely, she used to ride a Joe's bus called Field Muscle. I think these buses had names. The Jamaicans in the house can tell us. Because according to Miss Cicely, the bus she could ride was referred to as Field Muscle, and it was actually carrying her from Montego Bay to St. Anne and dropping her on the way to school. And therefore, let us continue with the 60s and 60s stories of Jamaica. So according to Miss Cicely, the bus left Montego Bay to St. Anne at 6 a.m. So this lady had to wake up about at 5. And that is what we do here in Kenya. You wake up very early because you have to make sure you arrive on time so that you catch up the bus or the matatu, you go to your working station. So she could wake up about 5 a.m. and then catch the bus at 6 a.m. and the bus takes her on the way to St. Anne's and she's dropped to school. And these buses were referred to as chichi. That was the way people used to call the buses, not because of the bags, the bed bags, or the pests that were in the bus, but because of the sound of the air, the brakes, and the automatic doors. You know, those vehicles were not so advanced like nowadays vehicles, and there was a lot of sound of the air, brakes, and automatic doors, and therefore the noise they used to make, that is why they were given the name Chichi. So those buses used to be called Chichi. There were preachers who could preach in the bus. According to Miss Cicely, these preachers used to enter these buses and actually with Bibles and preach the passengers and of course ask for something small to support them. We also have them here in Kenya, even up to today. There are preachers who enter the buses, they preach, and then after preaching, they pray, and then they ask for something small for support and transport. And Miss Cicely was saying, as a child, she could get irritated because these preachers used to disturb her peace, and there were others, and actually she was calling them the Wana women. These women used to enter the buses and start to engage the passengers with their story about hellfire. And you know that was so scary to a small girl. And therefore Miss Cicely didn't love these preachers and didn't love these women who used to enter the bus and actually talk about the hellfire, which is so scary to a child who is growing up. And therefore we have the preachers here in Kenya, but I don't mind them because they enter the bus, they give you the word of God, they ask for something small to support them as they preach from one place to the other. So that was happening in 60s in Jamaica. You can see how Jamaica evolved from what they were in 60s to what they are today. So according to Madam Cicely, there was also a ferry between Port Royal and downtown. There was a ferry that used to carry people from Port Royal to downtown. I don't know whether it is still there, but in those days, this ferry used to transport people from Port Royal to downtown. Remember that Port Royal was a very busy town during those days because of the pirates. And we said that it was called the weekend city because there was a lot of activities that were going on in Port Royal. There were also seaplanes. I could not imagine this. There were planes that were going through the sea. I don't know how they were going through the sea. Maybe the Jamaicans that were there during those days can tell us. So there were the seaplanes that worked on the land and then in the sea at the old Montego Bay airport. So they were called the seaplanes. And they were replaced with propellers, and then they were replaced with jets. So at first, there were aeroplanes in Jamaica, but there were sea aeroplanes that were later replaced with propeller planes and later by jets. People used to go to the airport to actually watch these planes. And also here in Kenya, we used to admire planes, and the schools used to take their children to actually go and see airplanes. I don't know whether nowadays that is done. So the schools used to organize trips to the airport so that the children can see the airplane, they enter into the airplane and see the different parts of the airplane. By the way, guys, to be serious, I've never entered an airplane. And therefore, I could see Jamaicans discussing here and talking about now the airplane they have entered, and I was saying it is a privilege. Here in Kenya, it is actually a privilege to enter a plane. So if you can imagine, Jamaica had seaplanes during the 60s. And then they were replaced by propeller planes and later by jets. Jamaica were advanced. And people used to go with their families. And if you are escorting your dear one, according to the story now, if you are escorting a person to the airport, there was a place the passengers used to stand and wave at their relatives as they departed. And I think here in Kenya we used to do the same, but it is done the same, but you cannot see the people that are departing because they depart away from where you wave them and they go. But in Jamaica you could see them and wave at them and then they leave. So families used to visit airports to actually see the airplanes take off, and it was very, very enjoyable. The other peculiar thing that I saw are the horses. The horses were black or white, and they used to carry caskets of a dead body and transport it. And these horses were followed by motorcades or motor vehicles, and people could also follow. So there was a procession sort of the horse carrying the casket and the motor vehicles, and then the people following behind. So that was very, very challenging because this was a very organized funeral whereby there were caskets carried by the horses and the motorcycles, and then the people followed. The driver was in black suit. This is very, very smart of the Jamaican people in those days, with the tails and a black top hat. So they used to be very, very smart in black suit and with the tails and a black top hat. The horses driving the hearse would always have poo-poo bags. So they could not poo-poo on the way. They used to have poo-poo bags striped to their handshakes. So they used to poo-poo there, and therefore there was no scattering of poo-poo along the way. And you see, the driver used to wear black suit, which has got a tail and a black top hat. I could imagine the way I could see such people in the movies with black hats, black suit, and a tail. The suit has a tail at the back, and they were very, very smart. There was a small airplane that flew from there was this guy who was saying there was a small airplane that flew from his home, that is Mandeville, every morning at about the same time. That one could set the clock so that the children can be woken up to go to school in Kingston or St. Andrew. And this was very epic because I remember even as there was an aeroplane, a very small craft that used to pass at 6 a.m. and one could know that it is time to wake up. So in Jamaica, there was this plane that could go through Mandeville, and it could actually make the children to be woken up, and they could go to school in Kingston and St. Andrew. Living in South Monax, this guy was living in South Manchester, and there is that story to tell. There was also the candy shop, and one of the people in the comment section was saying his great-grandfather was actually the owner of the candy shop. And the candy shop used to sell the candies, and the children used to enjoy the candies, and they were later replaced with Angel Flakes patties on Humber Street and were more spicy than tasty patties. So these were the things that were being sold for people to enjoy. There were air-conditioned buses as regular buses, not considered luxury, and buses that took you to Spanish Town. So there was this bus that was air-conditioned that used to take passengers to Spanish Town. They were named Pen, Overready, Bronx, Transport, Ferry. Those were the names of these buses: Pen, Overready, and Bronx, Transport. So there were these buses that used to ferry people from one destination to Spanish Town. So that was Jamaica in the 60s. And there was a road to run from Mississippi. She took the road about the way things used to be done and the way people used to be disciplined compared to today and the way people behave today. So there is a lot of change from the way people were in 60s to the way people are today. So guys, in the comment section below, if you are there those times, you can tell us what was there those days that is not there today. See you during the next video. Bye bye and God bless.